G'day friends and foes, Arjay here with Arjay's This Is Not Legal Advice, episode 41, or TINLA for short. And nor is it legal advice, it's opinion only, blah blah blah. So, in this little episode, I'm going to be talking about today's today's court action, and that involved the COVID directions as well as mandatory vaccines case, and had the potential to be removed to the High Court from the Queensland District Court. Hi Gigi. So anyway, maybe I'll move back a bit so people don't think I'm being weird talking to the camera. So I'm here at Kawara Beach. Woo! This is where I helped set a world record in terms of most people doing starfishes or sand angels at one time in the world. So that was last year, I think, and the Gold Coast won the title from Michigan that had it before, or So anyway, basically, with the case today, there was a police application, as many of you know if you watched the previous episode, and the police were claiming that the district court has no jurisdiction to hear appeals from. So they claim that the police, or that there was no jurisdiction of the district court to hear appeals from the magistrates court in relation to Peaceful Assembly Act cases. Hi Stevie and Barbara as well. So, sorry if I'm stumbling over my words a bit too. Basically, I slept 2 hours last night, and magically there were certain gremlins over the past little while with my computers, etc. So I was trying to refix formatting that magically stuffed up for my outline of submissions or outline of arguments. And I said in a previous episode about other things like my task management software. Magically all of my tasks just disappeared, not only ones that were due or upcoming, but also ones in the past, which was all related to these court actions. Hi Jeanne. Or Genie, sorry. Do you pronounce it Genie? That would make more sense, I think. And anyway, so basically the court today was not about the substantive issues, like that the COVID directions are completely bogus, that they have not been gazetted in accordance with Queensland law, therefore they're not Queensland law. So it must go to a government newspaper called the Gazette, and that notifies the world, even if someone hasn't actually bothered to read the Gazette. If something's been in a Gazette when it's exempted subordinate legislation, that's called constructive notice. So in other words, theoretically people are expected to read this government newspaper and know all of the subordinate legislation, exempted subordinate legislation. What the exempted means is basically you have subordinate legislation or regulations written by the Parliamentary Council, and they are not exempted legislation, and that has slightly different rules. And then you have exempted legislation or exempted subordinate legislation, which has to be government gazetted for it to have any force of law, to be made a law, to be operative. There's also, of course, the constitutional issues, as well as, concepts like people acting outside of their authority, ultra vires, and certain other aspects, including, damages for loss of rights and whatever. But anyway, so when I went to the court, it seemed apparent that the judge had already made her decision. She basically said, no one was even sworn in, which was interesting when it was the first hearing, with the other one adjourned after the police and the court claimed that it was to start at 10 o'clock on the stamped copy or sealed copy, and it really started half an hour earlier for a 20-minute hearing. So the judge made it clear from the beginning to a reasonable observer, I submit, that she had prejudged the case, and she said, this is very, very paraphrased, and I've got to await the official written reasoning, etc. But it was like, Mr. Martin, why do you think I should not throw this case out? And then I pointed out, hey, the applicant should go first, shouldn't they? And then she said, this is my court. I make the rules, basically. And as I said, this is very, very paraphrased. But then I made some submissions, including about, Section 69 and 113 of the District Court Act says that the District Court, on hearing matters appealed from the Magistrates Court, has the full powers of the Supreme Court Court of Appeal, which is unlimited power, really. And, there's always exceptions to the rule. Then it seemed that reluctantly she was listening to some submissions, but then... So it started really about 10:20 a.m. and then maybe even went for an hour. She probably expected it to go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes sort of thing. But to just allow me to speak for fair hearing rule kind of thing. And then she said that she had 2 more matters to deal with, to come back at 12:15 p.m. and that she would have read certain submissions by then and made her decision. So then we came back and the judge went through saying, the applicants submit XYZ, the respondent submits ABC, whatever, and then said that she is satisfied that the District Court does not have jurisdiction to hear matters relating to the Peaceful Assembly Act, so appeals from the Magistrates Court to the District Court. So in summary, the case got chucked out. Then the police barrister applied for costs, and costs were awarded. So this is a very summarised version, and I can get into more details later. So the short version is, hey, we lost, and they didn't bother listening to any of the substantive arguments. So the substantive part means the actual real, nuts and bolts, or bangers and mash, whatever way you want to call it, and that they have awarded costs against me. So with that, they did suggest that they would be providing a document saying what the cost would be this afternoon, and presumably those draft orders have been just sent to the judge, and the judge is cutting and pasting and working out if it's accurate or whatever. So yeah, so that's disappointing. There was a media person there, a freelancer, or maybe he has his own media company, and he interviewed me afterwards, and I'll be posting that to this page when it's ready. And he was very reasonable in my opinion. It wasn't like he was hey, look at this douchebag, just got his ass kicked in the court and doesn't know what he's talking about, or something like that. And it'll be interesting to see the footage. So I did like a video interview, and I do tend to waffle on a bit, so I'm sure it'll be edited down, and that'll be interesting to see how that goes. There is, of course, a balance between, hey, if no one knows about this, then sure, you can slink away and save embarrassment or whatever. But alternatively, if the story goes viral, which I'm hoping that it will, and I hope that you'll all assist with, but basically, hopefully there's outrage caused by that, and there is backing down, just like ScoMo came out with, I will make this Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine compulsory, or mandatory was the word, as mandatory as possible. And then there was a lot of backlash, so then he came out and said, oh, I didn't mean mandatory, I just meant like freely available to everyone. And, so the thing is, if the information, the story gets spread around everywhere, and sorry, my tie's falling down, but such is life, then more people think I'm a douchebag, but that is balanced by more people know what is happening, including in our court system. And I submit that the judge was actually incorrect in her statement, and that I do want to wait for written judgments, because there is a chance of potentially appealing. So I'll have 28 days to work out if I will appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal. There were some funny moments in the hearing, such as after we came back from the break, that the judge said something like, the applicant for the substantive case, myself, submits that the court has an inherent jurisdiction to supervise the lower courts. And then she said, this is the district court, which is an inferior court. We do not have that jurisdiction. As I said, this is very paraphrased. And then it's like, do you have any submissions in relation to that? And then I said, well, a district court is not an inferior court. An inferior court, by definition, is a magistrate's court or a local court. And this is a district court, which is an intermediate court. And I also submit that, you're mistaken, but, I appreciate that you've already made your decision. Then also in terms of costs, so you get to make submission as to, basically the first respondent, their barrister, Ms. Berry, and that will be in public record anyway, but she sought costs, and then they were having a debate, not really a debate, but the judge was like, hey, under which section? And then they're like, oh, is it section 16A? No, it's what about 23 or 28A of whatever act it was. And anyway, apparently under one of those sections, the court would not have jurisdiction to award costs, but in the other one, it included a proceeding which was defined in Schedule 1 of that act, the Civil Proceedings Act it would be, and that defines an appeal as a proceeding, therefore costs can be awarded under that. And then you get to make submissions as to, why you think costs shouldn't be awarded. And as a part of that, then I pointed out, which I did tell a court multiple times before, that the proceeding should have been stayed. And I said, hey, sorry, I didn't say it this morning, but, I did inform the court multiple times that under Section 78B of the Judiciary Act, that the court proceeding must be stayed until the court is satisfied that enough time has elapsed for the Attorneys General to make a decision as to if they wish to intervene or remove the case to the High Court. And then the Crown Law barrister, presumably, or maybe it was a solicitor, submitted, and he was representing Dr. Jeanette Young as well as the state of Queensland, and he said something like, Mr. Martin was sent an email today that the Attorney General does not wish to intervene, and then the judge, summed that up, included that in her summation, saying Mr. Martin has received notification from the Attorney General that they do not wish to intervene. And then I pointed out and reiterated, said, as I stated before, it's not just one Attorney General. The Section 78B notices must go to all of the Attorneys General in all 9 jurisdictions. So you've got, each of the states, each of the 2 main territories, ACT and Northern Territory. There is no Attorney General for, Ashmore Island, Carter Reef, whatever it is, Ashmore and Cartier Islands, that kind of thing, as well as the Federal Attorney General, and that only 3 of them had responded as the last time I checked, which was this morning, with their notice if they wish to intervene or not. So therefore enough time has not elapsed, and therefore proceedings must be stayed. And then she scoffed at me claiming, and she sums up what I state, sort of thing, and scoffed at, Mr. Martin claims that I must stay proceedings, blah blah blah. Oh, and a bit before that was in explaining, just checking, hi Anna, hi Renata. So I did state, for example, that to say the Attorney General of Tasmania may wish to intervene and get the matter sent to the High Court, and if anyone claims that the High Court has no jurisdiction, then that'll be an interesting little discussion. And then she scoffed at that as well. So that was before she scoffed at the whole thing of me submitting that she must stay the case, which it actually states in a legislation that a Tasmanian Attorney General would have anything to do with a Queensland District Court case. As I said, the matter... basically, I was banned from protesting, and for one, the magistrate had no power to do that, but for 2, there's several other issues, and the banning of the protesting was based on COVID grounds, COVID directions, and COVID directions are not law at all. Therefore, I have standing to challenge this, and that's why I'm here, to challenge it for everyone. And basically, that there are questions of law involving the interpretation of the Constitution, and I did say, some sections just to try and get that down on paper. She had already made a decision now, of course, but section 69, 51, subsection 23A, section 117 and 92 in particular, that they involve the interpretation of the Constitution. So just to explain that to some people who, don't know about the background of the case. So under section 69 of the Constitution, for instance, the states, or the colonies that became states technically, they transferred, there's all mozzies here everywhere, they transferred all of the quarantine facilities and quarantine only staff, and just say if they had, Bill, the doctor, was looking after quarantine and non-quarantine, then, they could retain him, but he couldn't do quarantine stuff anymore. But the argument there, or an argument there, is that the states do not have power over quarantine, despite it being within section 51, subsection 9, maybe 10, something like that, of the Constitution, which is known as concurrent powers. And the theory goes that, the states and the federal government both have jurisdiction over those matters. But then, of course, you have Section 109 of the Constitution that says if the federal government, Commonwealth government, makes a law and that law is to cover the field or to overlap a state law, then the state law is inoperative to the extent of the inconsistency. So basically, covering the field is the Commonwealth can make a law and have the intention that they have exclusive power over that thing. So an example is, say, marriage. So in ACT a few years ago, maybe about 1999 or something like that, maybe it was earlier than that, the ACT, they tried being clever. There's very left-wing government, at least at the time, and it's a home of a lot of the government workers, bureaucrats, which is probably the most unionised industry in Australia. You've got the APS, blah blah blah, but they tried doing something clever. So they said, hey, look, the Commonwealth government deals with marriage under the Marriage Act, and it says nothing about homosexual union, same-sex marriage, whichever way you want to call it, and so that leaves room for us to legislate that it's allowed. And then, of course, under other sections of the Constitution, such as 117, that would therefore mean, if that was allowed, that basically there would be same-sex marriage in every state and territory, because there could not be discrimination of one, a resident from one state to another state, and then that's been extended to territories. So therefore, you have Bill and Bill or whatever, they could have gotten married in the ACT and then move across the border, across the road to New South Wales. And then they say, New South Wales, you must recognise our marriage because of Section 117 of the Constitution. So, you have to basically make same-sex marriage as well. Then, they just travel around and before you know it, it would have been everywhere. So the original commentaries of the Constitution, also known as the Annotated Constitution, i.e. Quick and Garran's, defined marriage using case law, saying, hey, look, there was this case with this is very paraphrased, but, there's an African guy, or an English guy from memory, and just say he had an English wife and an African wife, and he lived in Africa, and he died, and say the African wife, just because she was the second one, tried getting his estate, saying, hey, look, I'm his wife, so hand over, the farm or whatever. And like I said, this is very paraphrased, this whole video, but then the court said, hey, look, you're actually married to Sally Smith, whatever her name was, so she gets a property. And marriage is and always has been between one man and one woman. So then John Howard amended the Marriage Act to so-called cover the field by saying marriage is one man and one woman. So that made the ACT law inoperative. So it's still on the statute books, or still was. Now it probably isn't, because it's a bit nuggatory or moot to have that. But whilst the Marriage Act defined marriage as one man and one woman, which now it doesn't, of course, but the act in the ACT had no effect, so it was as if it didn't exist, even though it was still on paper. And then I'll just check a couple of things. Hi Stan, hi Aquila. Renata says, seems our constitutional laws no longer apply and new laws regarding our rights and freedoms are being passed without referendum. How is this possible? We even have people such as Julian Hill, a Labor man from memory, I don't think he was green, that suggests that Australia gets made a republic via postal vote. So, that's not even a real referendum, and you can't even have a referendum to make Australia a republic legally, lawfully, because basically a Section 128 referendum, which is really a triple majority, even though it's called a double majority. So in other words, you need, for a positive change, there needs to be a majority of people in a majority of the states, as well as a majority all up. So that's 3, not double, but 3 times your same majority at least. But anyway, so then, there are people that just do unlawful things. It's like the journalist today informed me about the court. There's a big court case in New Zealand, and it just came out that the first 9 days of the lockdown in New Zealand were illegal. And then apparently Russia Today reported it factually like that, and then other reports were like, hey, sure, it was illegal, but it was justified. Which, how's it justified to lock people up illegally? That's garbage. Anyway, so, I'll just see what else. John says, Martin, you're a legend. Thank you so much. Thank you. Chiz does a little fists. A lot of people saying hi. Gigi says, I love how you challenge them. Good for you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone saying hi too, but, I can't just repeat hi to everyone. Barbara says, so sorry, but you gave it your all. Thank you very much. Shaz says, keep up the good work. John says, insane outcome, so corrupt. So there'll be a lot of people that suggest that may well be the case. But, and then of course it depends on your definition of corruption, but basically it's like with the costs. So I argued in my submissions not only about, hey, look, it should be stayed until the Attorneys General decide if they wish to intervene and if they wish to send it to the High Court. And I also pointed out public interest. So the case isn't really just about me and protesting and reset Parliament. What it's about is the illegality of the COVID directions. And, they are illegal. They aren't the law. People are illegally being arrested, falsely arrested, based on fluff, the colour of law, as it's named. That means where something's pretending to be a law and it's not really the law. And it's like, in the army you wear false colours if you, just say there's Finland against Russia and one will be a spy and they dress up in the other one's uniform. So it's like a colour of law. So it's something that looks like it's legit, but it's not actually legit. So, a Finnish soldier dressed up as a Russian soldier to go spy on the Russians is not actually a Russian soldier. Gigi also said, been thinking of you. Thank you very much. Scrolling back down the bottom. Oops. So what's next? So, well, really I need to receive the written orders and then go through that, and then it is possible to appeal with leave of the Supreme Court, but again, it's risky business. I don't know how much the cost order is against me. They could either make it really high to bankrupt me so I can't run for Parliament, that I can't run a political party. I'm sure they wouldn't be very happy if, we did run for Parliament and we took office and then they're like, hey, look, this is that douchebag I fought in court. And, if you have someone in Parliament or a group of people in Parliament, controlling Parliament, that knows that the Chief Health Officer, broke the law and pretended that she could lock everyone up and make it that the borders were locked down and you can't go into Queensland without a 14-day compulsory quarantine that you have to pay for even if you're not sick, etc. And I don't really want to repeat things from other videos, but setting up dangerous concrete blockades and 50 kilometre / 500 kilometre travel limits that we had before, and shutting down all the little businesses and whatnot. But I'm sure that someone in that position would not want someone in my position to form government, because should you have people in the bureaucracy that are breaking the law and doing tortious actions, and without the law stating that tortious actions can be done, Michael says, thank you for your work. Thank you, Michael. Jody says, boo. Where am I? I'm in Kawara Beach. So there's a clubhouse over there. And this is where we set the world record for the most simultaneous starfishes in the sand, or sand angels. I think it was last year, maybe in December. So I was a part of that. I don't remember how many people there were, maybe 700 or 800 or something like that. Anna says, I still say virus or no virus in this situation, being fluff should not shut down the world. Yeah, so, the shutdown's doing a lot more damage than the purported virus anyway. Besides, if you follow the flu statistics, that this year's flu statistics, just say last year it started down here and it went up a little bit and it did a massive spike. Then this year it has this exact same pattern at the start, and then it falls down to nothing, and magically that's the same time that corona deaths go up. So are they just mislabeling influenza deaths as corona deaths? And we do have in Australia, there's 19 Sentinel hospitals that are tasked with flu monitoring. And if you want some great videos about this, then go to Peter Little's page. And basically, other hospitals testing for flu. And if someone has the flu and corona and dies of one, is it classed as a flu death or a corona death? So Gigi says, when we get together to protest on the 5th of September, what should we expect? Arrested, fines? So presumably you're in Victoria, and is that correct? And it's the 500,000 people marching, I don't know where, on Parliament or something like that. So I'll wait for you to answer that. Jeannie says, so illegal in Queensland. Yeah, so I'm in Queensland, but the case has worldwide implications. So if the corona directions or COVID directions are illegal in Queensland, then they're likely illegal in other states and territories, or they are if it's deemed unconstitutional. And as which case was that? The first or second taxation case in a high court, you had Chief Justice Latham point out that people are mistaken when they think that a law is a law until it's challenged and found to be unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional ab initio and can be ignored by anyone. And that was the Chief Justice of the High Court. So, it's interesting. Yeah, it is pretty here, Jody. So I don't go to the beach much, but I'm sort of avoiding surfer's paradise. Maybe I get a bullet in my head. Who knows? Lee says, yes, it's a bit too fishy, methinks. Daisy, hello. I'm sure everyone can chip in. If you have to pay, get a GoFundMe happening for yourself. So I do actually have a GoFundMe, which I've had for maybe a month, maybe not that long. It's got about $2,220 in it, and I'm not sure, yet how much these costs are going to be. It's not indemnity costs, so with costs there is a saying that costs follow the event. So what that means is that usually for a court case the loser pays the winner's costs, but it's on what's called a party-party basis, and that equates to roughly 60 to 70% of what is actually spent. If you do some really dodgy things, and the judge didn't accept that the other party did dodgy things in misquoting, so at paragraph 53 of Oakey Creek, what's it called? There's a court case that's like Oakey Creek, and they put versus Brody, even though Brody was the second respondent, so it's really versus blah 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 council. They stated that the judge says that you cannot appeal from the magistrate's court to the district court, which they don't say that at all, and it's actually the respondent's submission what they're talking about. So the judge didn't accept that that is misleading the court, and basically told me don't go there politely. But anyway, so Jeannie, yes, they call flu deaths COVID deaths. GG's in Victoria. Yeah, so it depends what the law is in Victoria at the time. I haven't had a chance to go through because I've basically been doing, like how many hours? Probably 12-hour days for months on this case for Queensland, because that's where I live, so that's where I have standing to challenge this, because I've been affected more so than, any Tom, Dick and Harry, because, I'm trying to launch a political party, as well as, other things. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. But, there are slightly different rules in different states. So I know that Brad Hazzard, who is a health minister in New South Wales, at least has one COVID direction set in a Gazette. That might well be after I was doing videos saying, hey, look, you need this notification. And, so I'm not sure about Victoria at this stage, but I suggest that people in Queensland, and this is not a legal suggestion, nor can it be relied upon, blah, 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 but if someone did have a COVID fine in Queensland, especially if it's on appeal to, say, the District Court or the Supreme Court, then basically, why not add, or what I would do is, if I was in that position and seeing some douchebag on the video speaking to me, being myself, then, I would add as a part of my argument, my defence, that, hey, look, the COVID directions aren't even a law, so bugger off. And, it's kind of hard to probably get a COVID direction, a COVID fine at the moment, for myself at least, because I don't have a shop or anything like that where I've got, more than a required or allocated 4 people in there at one time or some kind of stupid thing. So Anna says, so many experts are saying the real information about this virus, not able to catch it. Yeah, so I just saw an article, I did not read it all, but it says that people have antibodies for coronavirus that have never been exposed to it. So what does that tell you? Jeannie's in South Australia. So in South Australia, as I pointed out last night, the original emergency declaration, and that's what everything's based on for South Australia, the dude didn't even spell his name right, that purportedly made this decision and signed the declaration. Grantley Stephen, or Stevens, I forget which way it is, he left an E out of his first name, and he has a really weird first name, as I do, Arjay, Arjay, and he misspelled his name. So did he read the thing when he signed it? Did he sign it? Did, Joe the plumber sign it? Jackie the janitor? Whatever. Michael says, Parliament House in Melbourne. I'm also in Melbourne, so that's about the 500,000 people marching on Melbourne as a 6-month anniversary. We had this garbage where it was, just 2 weeks. 2 weeks, everyone gets locked up, and then the virus goes, and, we've sealed the borders, as in the international borders, so then the virus disappears, which is just garbage anyway. Of course, they didn't do that. And, how long's that been extended for? Longer and longer and longer. So it'll be interesting to see if, 500,000 people do turn up, what the police will do. Are they going to arrest everyone? Are they going to just go after the leaders and do their little, they form a triangle and march into the crowd, grab someone, march back, start bashing up women and children on the street to provoke a reaction? With the mainstream media there ready to film, and then we'll play it in reverse order saying, the only reason people got bashed up with nightsticks and tear gas and machine guns or whatever, with dummy rounds in them, is because, Officer Joe, who's a pregnant mum and whatever, she got just bashed up by all these bad people, when really some could argue that the police often make trouble, especially riot squads, in order to justify them bashing up people that they were doing anyway. So they pick on elderly people and women and children. And then, some people can say there's anecdotal evidence of that, such as with the Mother's Day, or was it Mother's Day? Maybe it was the day before Mother's Day. Protests in Sydney, non-protest, exercising my rights, where Renee was arrested with her little kitty, and there was also a man who was just there with his like a little baby or 2 babies in a pram, and also got arrested. They do that so that people get enraged, some could suggest, and then they react, and then they get the reaction they wanted, so they can justify beating you up and locking people down. It's like Dan Andrews when he lied, claiming that, or misled, whichever way you want to look at it, allegedly, that 1 in 4 quarantine people in Victoria were breaking the quarantine, when that's false. Lee says, so grateful you are fighting for us, Arjay. Thank you very much. Michael, I believe we have permission in Victoria on the 13th of September, Parliament House. Okay, so maybe the 13th of September is the one with the 500,000 people. That date does seem more familiar. Jody says, plug it again, cross GFM. I don't know what that means exactly. And what I was saying also, I do get off track a bit, but with the costs against me, I suggest... Wait, someone's... who would be doing? Okay. Just minimise that. So basically they could either do really high costs to try and bankrupt me, so I can't run for Parliament, can't do all this other stuff, but then it's more likely that I would appeal, or they could go sort of in the middle, so it's, borderline if I would appeal or just suck it up and pay the money, because otherwise if I'm going to, lose a bunch of money, then I may as well take it all the way to the High Court if I'm allowed to, with leave of the court. So it's not an automatic right to appeal, but if you have a good prima facie case and it's not, so I won't give tips to people, not to you people, but to other people watching. So thinking of you all, stay safe and God bless. Thanks, Jeannie. So Gigi says that the Melbourne protest has been moved to the 5th. Daisy says she'll chip in. Thank you very much. So that's with the go. Sorry, getting a phone call. So with the GoFundMe, it has been censored on Facebook. There are people who have donated that have posted it on their walls, and they say, hey, look, it's on my wall, here's a post. But then to other people, it appears as attachment unavailable. So, that's dodgy in itself. But if you go on GoFundMe and you look up COVID 1984 directions case or something like that, you can see some more videos with me saying what the case was about, and also the purpose for the funds, that it can't be used for personal use, that it is specifically for, if I lost. And if I lost and it was deemed a public interest case, which I still submit that it is, and therefore the state government should pay for them, and you got these people being paid by the government anyway, then then I would use it for other constitutional type cases, or ones of public importance, human rights related, that kind of thing. So you can do the money that way if you want. You can also donate, or instead donate to me personally, where I can actually use it for, living or whatever, at PayPal. Go to paypal.me, that's me, /Arjay Martin, ARJAY with a capital A and capital M. So you can do that if you like. Any donations appreciated. You don't have to donate though, of course. And sharing, getting the message out is, potentially more important in a way, sort of. But anyway, Jeannie says they are lying. Daisy says cows and sheep often have different strains of coronavirus, maybe why abattoirs seem affected. Possibly. And are those abattoir workers actually dying from coronavirus, or are they just getting a sheep one? There's been a coronavirus vaccine for dogs for, when was that? Might have come out 2006. Lee says, okay, I'm late to this. What protests are we talking about? Something coming up. So what gave me standing to challenge the COVID directions in the courts up here was that I put in for authorised protests. They were illegally posed, I claim, by a sergeant acting on her own behalf, not doing it on behalf of the police commissioner, as the Peaceful Assembly Act requires, and it went from there. Jeannie, it's communism. Yes, the United Soviet Socialist Republic of Victoria. Anna, the police will wait for an excuse to violently attack. Yes, very true, all lies. Yeah, I wonder if I magically start getting all these, fines for things or whatever, not COVID related, of course, because they know that I have an argument against that. All scaremongering. Hi Earl says about the date change to the 5th of September. Check out Thanos' site for the 500,000 people marching on Parliament. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. Hi Wayne. Hi Jane. Hi Liliana, sorry. So apparently there's 2 dates, the 5th and the 13th for Victorian protests, and the 13th has been leaked to the media as per a clip today. So the PayPal, Jeannie, is paypal.me, me, / as in / this way, RJ, ARJAY, MARTIN, Martin. Yeah, maybe I can type it. Big love to you too, Jody. Hi, Jake. I do know about Know Your Rights Group. So Know Your Rights Group formed the Great Australian Party with Rod Cullerton, and I was endorsed as the Great Australian Party's #1 candidate out of the two on the ticket for the 2019 federal election. Thank you, John, for posting a GoFundMe. And Daisy says the police will provoke, stay non-combatant. So that again relates to, the police may well attack people, arrest people to get a reaction to, I'm just trying to type here, to get people to, react and have the media there and beat them up and all this other stuff. So I just posted the PayPal link as well. I'll just go for a walk because someone keeps calling me that is somewhere around here, and sorry about the loud noise when that happens. Does anyone else have any interesting questions or things they want to talk about? So Liliana says the protest's actually Australia-wide, so that's good. So, it's also helpful in that, just looking for someone, it's also helpful that, they can't just borrow extra police from New South Wales or the ACT or something like that for the Victorian stuff. And, people should keep the police busy in a way for that day in a peaceful manner, of course, but that way protects everyone. If they don't have 5,000 police in Victoria or something in Melbourne on that day. Jane's asking, should we withdraw cash from banks? That's up to you. I don't have a financial services license. I have to say this stuff, even though it sounds a bit silly, because I have a big target on my back. And even though I've got a Juris Doctor law degree, I don't give legal advice. You cannot give legal advice when you are not a legal practitioner. This is very summarised. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, like someone can get permission from, say, a tribunal to represent someone in a tribunal, just making up an example, but that's not really giving legal advice. But the same applies for financial services advice, that if someone says, hey, look, pull all your money out of the bank because the banks there's going to be a run on the banks or something like that, then they can also get in trouble. It's easy for some people to say certain things and get away with it because they don't have a target on their back, and people are like, who cares? But people that do have a target on their back, then people look for any excuse to try and get them in trouble. And, I definitely have a target on my back. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We've had all this discussion about, hey, this is the government speaking, of course, that, hey, let's make it illegal for people to have transactions in cash of $10,000 or more. And they already basically have that, sort of. It has an asterisk, salami tactics. So if someone purchases something for $10,000 or more, or even just under that, so, some people otherwise would pay $9,999, and then, that wouldn't be reported, but that gets reported to AUSTRAC, which is basically an organisation set up for investigating, what do you call that? Like black market, money laundering, terrorism funding, that kind of thing. So the reasoning for that is, you might have Bill, and Bill's an old age pensioner on Centrelink, and he supposedly only gets, whatever old age pensioners get on Centrelink a week, $500 or $300 or whatever it is, and they go to buy a car for $30,000 cash that they had stuck under their bed, and they may well have paid tax all their life and just have savings, but then there's also the case where maybe Bill is really a drug dealer, or he's washing money for ISIS or Al-Qaeda, which of course means a database in Arabic, according to, was it Robin Cook? There was a UK minister who came out many years ago, maybe around 2000 or whatever, or 2005 or whatever, and from memory he went for a walk, where he always went for walks in the forest, and had a heart attack. Wink, wink. After he came out and said, I don't think it's Robin Cook because I think he's still alive, but the dude came out and said, hey, Al-Qaeda is actually a CIA asset, and this isn't my claim, this is my memory of what happened there, and what it is a database of all CIA assets, i.e. American people that are bought off, paid off, whatever you want to call it, or American operatives in the Middle East. So, dude came out and said that. He was a minister in the UK government from memory, maybe even defence minister or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Maybe some of you know the story and can put the person's name. And then he went for a walk and, magically died. It's like... So, anyway, I'm just waving at someone that keeps calling me, so they saw. So, it's like Sonny Bono, as in Sonny and Cher, or Sonny and Cher, however you want to pronounce Cher's name. And supposedly there's a story that, so the official death is that he had a skiing accident and smashed into a tree. But there are people that claim that he was supposedly beaten up and then carried by two people, because he was doing, and it's a known fact that he was doing a big investigation into government corruption. But the story goes that, they had person A on his right side, person B on his left side, him in the middle when he's already dead, and then led into a tree to fake why he died. And it was funny, at an auction called Lloyd's Auction, they actually had his 1984, from memory, Porsche, that was his campaign car, and it's got a little sticker saying Sonny for Senate or whatever it was. And then also, just looking for something. Then I also tried contacting Cher to say, hey, look, your hubby's ex-car or ex-hubby's car's actually for sale, and, I don't know who bought it, don't know if she got the message or whatever. Magali says, reckon they'll stop cash, mate. Yeah, so, the government wants unlimited control, and today's shown that apparently they can get it. As I pointed out to the judge, saying about public interest case, and, you got this poor bastard being me, or impecunious, as it's called with some fluff in your mouth, or, politically correct. Why is it up to me to try and challenge these illegal COVID directions? And obviously the reason for having a court, as someone else pointed out to me, but it goes without saying, is that you split the government into three factions, the judiciary, the legislative branch and the executive branch, so that any one of them can stand up to the other two. So if the judges are just, giving judgments to all their mates or something, that the legislative branch can make that illegal, and then get the so maybe it's really 2 against 1, 2 beats 1, but then get the police to arrest the judges, as an example. But then, you have the judges, the judiciary, to stand against government overreach. So that came from a US case, which was Madison v. Marsbury. And V is pronounced in court in Australia and, because it's this party and that party. But that's kind of stupid anyway, but that's how they do it, because otherwise you have Tom and Jerry and Peter and Brett. And, who is it against? Is it Tom and Jerry on one side and Brett and Peter on the other side? Maybe. But what if it's Tom and Jerry and Brett? Is it Tom and Jerry against Brett, or is it Brett and Jerry against Tom? Just as an example. Thank you, Renata, as well. So anyway, I'll probably bugger off now. So a summary is that there was an application by the other respondents, so the State of Queensland and Dr. Jeanette Young's legal team adopted, after carefully considering the submissions of Arundale's legal team, which was done by the Queensland Police Service, and that application was to throw out the substantive case, which included, all this stuff about COVID directions being illegal, or against mandatory vaccination. I do have standing to challenge those things with Reset Parliament, and being a political person, as well as having certain things affect me within that. And, often courts will just fob people off for difficult cases by saying, hey, you have no legal standing, you are not affected more so than anyone else. There was a case of Berg against Obama in the USA, where a lawyer, there were a couple of different lawyers, I don't remember if it was Phil Berg or if it was Berg, might have been the female lawyer or attorney, as they call them in America, because they don't have a split profession. They don't have barristers and solicitors, they just have attorneys. But anyway, they tried suing when, from memory, Obama's half-brother and his grandma, they showed camera teams his grandma as an example, and this is just from my memory, so maybe my memory's a bit flaky, but the grandma is pointing to his room in Kenya where she says he was born. That's his grandma. And his half-brother, what was his name? George. And apparently George was living in poverty, and, his half-brother in the meantime's a multi-squillionaire. You have all these politicians that go in Parliament paupers, or, $2 million or something, they come out with $400 million magically. Nothing suspicious about that. But, there was evidence that he was not an American-born citizen, natural-born citizen. Both parents weren't Americans, and he was allegedly born in Kenya, which was a UK colony at the time. And anyway, so there are a couple of lawyers that tried suing, and it got thrown out of court, saying you have no more, you're not affected any more than any other American, so it's just chucked out, which is just a ridiculous thing. But because of me, in my position, I have legal standing, so, it's not easy for the courts to throw out based on legal standing, because, it's instantly appealable. So there are other ways to make difficult cases go away. And I went there, and again, just summarising, the court claimed it had no jurisdiction to hear the matter and awarded costs against me. So I'll bugger off in a second. John says, after years of study, the solution for me was Bitcoin. It's going to be a reserve asset of the future. Magali, will you be taking the jab or you don't agree to it? So no one's going to be injecting me with anything. And, you know, it is illegal anyway, but the government can just do what they did in New Zealand, where New Zealand apparently just determined that the first 9 days of the corona lockdown there was illegal. Yet, you know, it's already passed. So if the government says, hey, vaccines are mandatory, and they just jab everyone, and then they say 6 months later, oh, look, you know, we were wrong, it's too late, you've already been jabbed with it. And of course, they don't tell you that it has things like polysorbate 80, polysorbate 20, which are known to sterilise people in it, do they? Good on you, mate. I won't be. That's good, you know, everyone should stand up. And Renata, what about a class action as we're all affected? So potentially, but class actions aren't as easy as some people think. So without getting in all the details and noting that I'm going to bugger off soon, then basically just say if there's a ship that gets sunk and people lose all their luggage, they don't necessarily all have a class action against the ship. And the courts can say, hey, look, you don't have a class action and you have to do your cases separately, that kind of thing. They also have litigation funders, which are often involved with class actions. They are trying to make it that they have to have a financial services license now. It was on ABC Radio yesterday. And then a gentleman that was involved with litigation funding of the live cattle export case, where the government overnight just said, hey, look, you can't sell cows to overseas, because there was some video from, you know, months before that apparently, was it ABC, was paying the people in Indonesia in the abattoirs to beat up the animals on purpose to film it and then get the animal export banned. And of course, a lot of people don't realise that in a lot of Muslim countries, which are often third world countries, they don't actually have refrigeration readily available. So despite, you know, besides the gruesomeness of halal or kosher killing or whatever, no stun killing, then, you know, if you don't have refrigeration, then you have to kill animal fresh, otherwise you'll get sick. But anyway, so that litigation funder was on ABC Radio and basically said, hey, look, you got the mega ones which can afford all this extra compliance, and then you got, you know, the smaller litigation funders, so they provide money to fund the class actions. And I'll do a video maybe tomorrow on a interesting class action in Queensland to do with electricity prices. But, you know, there seems to be the kiboshes being put on class actions. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, thank you everyone. Bye. Have a nice day. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Bye.